What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful night tonight. Beautiful night. Perfect temperature. Humidity is just right. And I'm just out here having a cup of tea. Big fan of tea. This is not Lipton, but I love Lipton tea. Love Lipton tea. This happens to be Paul Newman tea. Pretty good. Very good, actually. And I have it in a Pans cup. See that? Now Pans is a restaurant in Los Angeles. If you're ever in LA, if you're ever here, I highly recommend it. Good breakfast. That's all I go for. I love the breakfast. Steak and eggs. Perfect combination, and friendly staff. Now, pick up one of the cups when you're there in a nice t-shirt. So, like I said, I highly recommend it. Delicious, delicious food. Awesome, awesome place. Delicious. So, have a hammer here. Brand new hammer. This one is a 16-ounce hammer. S-wing. Now, if you come to my house, you will see a big collection of hammers. I have more hammers than Bob Vila. Guaranteed. I bet you anything I have more hammers than Bob Vila. But I especially like this. I have a German one too that kind of looks like this, except much more expensive. Nice leather handle. When I was a kid, there was a really good carpenter that we knew, and this is what he used, and I always liked it. It's steel all the way through. It absorbs the shock on the leather. Made in the USA, one of the few things. And for some reason I appreciate this hammer company, and the German one too. If I show you, they look similar, except the German one is a little bit higher quality. A little bit. So like I said, 16 ounce, but I have a whole big container full of hammers. I get the 20 ounce, I get the 16. 20 ounce, you know, it'll wear you out. It'll wear you out after, you know, a few hundred nails. Start feeling it. You know, yeah, it's a good workout. So this lighter one here is, you know, it saves you the energy. It saves you the energy. Many years ago, I would install wooden floors, and I would put, you know, the thin plywood on the bottom there as the cushion layer before the hardwood. And those pieces of plywood, 4x8s, they take hundreds of nails. Every 4 inches, nail. And sometimes, depending on, you know, the location, if I went into a bathroom, for example, and you open up the door, go in, and you hear creaking right as you enter, yeah, that spot there, I would fill it up with nails, but in different angles. I'd go left, right, this way, straight down, you know, just so that they wouldn't lift after many walk-ins. Christopher Walkens. So I should go back to some people, because I have an idea, some of these places that I did that to, I should say to them, you have any creaking in your floor? I did your floor like 30 years ago. See what they say. Probably say, no, surprisingly, 30 years later, the floor does not creak. The wife died, but the floor does not creak. Because I do heavy duty floors. Not now, but back then. Delicious. Delicious. So, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Made a video about him a couple of days ago. Just a brief ending is where I mentioned him a bit, but really I was thinking about it, and I go, what a sad situation. I think he was on vacation. He's down there on vacation, and the current, the undertow, took him out. And it's very difficult. You know, I mean, if you're not ever in a situation like that, avoid it. But if you ever have been, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The undertow pulls you slowly, 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 slowly. You don't even notice it. And at some point, you will try and step down, and you'll be like, oh, I'm at like 15 feet now. And then you start panicking a little bit, and you say, okay, I'm going to swim in. But the undertow keeps pulling you back, pulling you back. You go in 3 feet, you get pulled back 4 feet. And eventually, it exhausts you. You got lactic acid building up in your muscles. You're running out of breath. And if you're a little bit heavy or if you're not in shape, nothing you can do. It'll pull you under. And if it's wavy, the waves are pulling you under, then you have two things to fight. And yeah, very sad story. I'm a fan of his. I used to watch him on the Cosby Show a lot, and I'd say that's a kid that 95% of the population can get along with. You know, he just had that, it's tough to describe, but he had that, you know, that feeling of well-being when you're around him. You know, really, really nice individual, but, you know, life is short. Life is short. 54. So 54, it seems like a lot when you're 20, right? You run into somebody who's 54 and you're like, oh, they're old. That's the way I used to think. I was like 18 years old, and you'd run into somebody who's in their 50s, and you'd think, yeah, they're up there. And then you get into that age group, and you're like, that's not that old. And I bet you feel that way if you reach 60, 70. You're like, yeah, that's not that old, because it's fast. It's very fast. Life is quick. You arrive, and you're like, how did I get here so fast? You know, because you can't capture every moment and relive it, so it's like every moment you're in the present. And it's almost like it's instantaneous. Boom. I was in first grade not too long ago. Doesn't feel that way to me. And then all of a sudden, here I am, 2025. But yeah, liked him as an actor, liked the style, and I enjoyed the Cosby Show. I used to watch that all the time. I don't think I missed when it was on. I would be right in front of the TV. I'm watching the Cosby Show, and I'll tell you why. Big fan of Cosby, and I'll tell you why again. When I was a kid, there was a cartoon called Fat Albert. And in my time, cartoons on Saturday mornings, that was a big deal. You know, now kids don't know about that stuff, but for me, Friday during school, I'd have a sense of euphoria, because I knew, you know, you get Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, right? And then you knew Saturday morning was cartoons. I'd get up at 7 o'clock, start watching them all the way till Fat Albert came on. Fat Albert, in my time, in my neighborhood, was the last one, last cartoon. And once that showed, it was done. Then you had to go watch Bowling or Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller. So I'd get up at 7, I'd watch everything. I knew all the channels. Basically, it was 3 channels back then, 4, 5, 7. ABC, CBS, NBC, that was it. But I knew what I wanted to watch. There was Hong Kong Phooey, Yogi Bear was on, the Space Nuts, the Lost Saucer, Land of the Lost, right, with the Sleeve Stacks, and that was that Wonder car there. They found a horn in the junkyard. They'd squeeze it, and the Schlepp car would turn into a Wonder Bug. And those 3, 4 kids that were like detectives. That, you had the Shazam and Mighty Isis show. It was like, I think 15 minutes apiece. But you know, once Fat Albert came, I was kind of a little bit sad, because I knew that was the end of the Saturday cartoons. And I was a fan of Bill Cosby's, big fan, because he had that. He was like on the side of a junkyard somewhere where the kids would go and hang out, and he would sit there and he would sing. He didn't sing the song. That some other guy sang the song, but he would do the hey 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 and throw the paintbrush, exclamation mark. But he was always doing something in the junkyard, and I love that lifestyle. I love that lifestyle. If I had a little section in the junkyard, I don't know, a little area with a desk, a couple of chairs, milk cartons or carts, milk carts. I'd love that as a hangout. And maybe on the other side would be like the railroad tracks, because I'm a fan of the railroad tracks. So around 2 o'clock Cosby would come on, and I'd sit and watch, and then he always gave advice, whether it was about stealing, lying, whatever it was. During the breaks, he'd have a little section. In the beginning, he had a little section where he would say, you know, some good advice to you, and then the cartoon would begin. And I loved that cartoon. I loved everything about him, where they hung out, the fact that they were in a band. They converted all the junk into instruments. And Bill Cosby, the brains behind that. So I've been a fan since those days, way back. And then when the Cosby Show came on, automatically it was a natural transition for me. I went from the Fat Albert cartoon to the Bill Cosby Show. And, you know, I love the humor on it. I love the music. A lot of jazz, blues. I know he had B.B. King once. I watched that. And I go, yeah, I like B.B. King a lot. But Bill Cosby had a good taste for music, especially when he came to jazz. You know, I used to watch him on the old shows like The Tonight Show, and he would talk about old drummers in the jazz business. So I appreciate that music. Jazz and classical music, you have to know what you're doing. Rock and roll and blues, not so much. You can fake it. You know, you can learn a few notes, a couple of chords here and there, and you can play the blues, you can play rock and roll. But when it comes to jazz and classical, you can't do that. You sound ridiculous. They'll throw tomatoes at you on stage. So all those guys that were jazz players, they knew how to play well. When we were trying to buy a house many years ago, we were looking, went to many different houses, but one house stuck out to me. And the guy, I guess he was in his 60s, died. They were trying to sell the house. So we went there and we looked. Nice house, but he had something impressive in the front room there. He had about 30-40 big boxes filled with vinyl of jazz, just jazz. And I found so many good records in there. I didn't want to buy the whole thing. It was just hundreds and hundreds of records. I think they said there were 2,000 records, so it'd be thousands of records. So he had 2,000 records, and I found probably 40 or 50 that I wanted. So I went and I, tapped the guy, and I said, hey, you guys selling that? He goes, we are, but we're not selling individuals. He says to me, we're doing the whole thing in one shot. And I said, yeah, that's a lot. I don't know where I want to put all that. And I didn't get it. But he had a rich collection of jazz. It was all jazz. All the greats were in there. And I found a bunch that I wanted, but like I said, he wanted to sell the whole thing. And I understand that, because if you sell a little bit, then some other guy comes in and goes, yeah, I don't want that, I want that. Just buy the whole thing. I would have bought the whole thing if I had some, space for that. A lot of boxes. But anyway, I kind of regret it now, but, but I do enjoy hearing jazz. I enjoy all types of music. I listen to stuff from all over the place. I got stuff from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I'm not really a fan of the 90s music as much. I found that the 90s hit a low point for me, but I appreciated it, not as much as the other decades. And then, now, the 20s, here we are in the 20s. Because my kids are now, at a young age still, and they listen to a lot of popular music, contemporary stuff. I listen to it in the car, and it's grown on me. So I've not aged like my parents, where they heard their music when they were in their prime, like 20, 25, and they stuck to that. There's nothing else after that. There's nothing good after that. Me, I appreciate the music of today, and the music of my time and before. And jazz is a unique style. It doesn't really have it's almost like whatever, but it puts you in a nice relaxed mood. Slow jazz, get in an elevator, hit the button, jazz comes on. So yeah, when I go to Amoeba, it's a record store, I go throughout the whole store, but I go to the rock and roll section, I go to the blues section, I go to the jazz section. Every time I have to see what's out, what has been remastered. So that's what I do. And I got a ton of stuff now. Got a ton of stuff, and I prefer vinyl. Like I'm from the old days, which I am. So that Cosby show, it had a lot of that, good music on there. Another thing I appreciated, Bill Cosby's shoes. Always had them shined up. Right? Now you can't, sometimes you can, but most of the times you cannot put a good shine on a sneaker or a shine at all. But Cosby wore nice dress shoes, nice clothes, and the shoes always had a shine on them. And that's what I believe. If you're going to wear dress shoes, they have to be shiny. You have to get nice polish, nice brushes, and shine them up like a mirror. Nice. Like his were at the beginning of the credits where he would do that. Yeah. And another thing I'll tell you about that show, great art. Really nice art. You remember Good Times? Remember that art piece, that drawing there? The one that Eddie Murphy has? The second, I guess there were two that were made. He has the second one, the one that wasn't used on the show. I love art like that. And Cosby, there was an episode where his wife wanted to get some artwork, and they ended up going to some auction or something, and she ended up getting it, and then that hung up on the wall. But yeah, I appreciate, I don't know, there's something about that style that I look at it, it's like the picture has 1,000 stories to tell. I look at the picture and I can almost come up with the stories that the people in that picture are living through at the time it was drawn. It's like a frozen moment in time. But yeah, I remember all that. Yeah, I mean, he basically single-handedly saved NBC. That network was going down the tubes, and then Cosby came by with the show and he brought it back to life. But Malcolm was like the perfect actor to play that role. It's exactly what that spot needed. Somebody like that style, good-natured, friendly, had that friend. It was that friend, he had like an insect, what was his name there? Forget his friend's name. He had a friend, he would show up once in a while. And they would do things as kids do. If you don't do that kind of stuff when you're a kid, when are you going to do that stuff when you're an old man? You have to do a little bit of mischief in your life, because where you're going to have stories to tell. If you don't have them from real life. And I'll tell you that I have the collection of Fat Albert and the gang there, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. When I first bought it, my kids watched. They were little, like 3-4 years old, and they loved it. They loved it, and we watched every episode. But that was, for me, that was the closing. The Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids cartoon. That was the closing cartoon for Saturday morning cartoons. I knew that it was over, and that's when I started realizing, even back then, that time flies. So, just to say again that dying by drowning, it's one of the worst ways to go. It's very slow. It's very painful. That and probably fire. Very, very harsh ways to go. And he looked fantastic, 54 years old, you know, great shape. But what are you gonna do if the Neanderthal wears you out? You could be in the best shape. You know, there are people that are like top swimmers that have died. They've drowned. You know, so you know it's a difficult. The ocean is not forgiving. You know, if it catches you in the right spot, it will not release you, and you get lucky if you can make it out. I mean, they found him, but by the time they found him, I think he was already dead. They said they tried mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, although now I think it's with the plastic bubble that I don't think they go mouth-to-mouth anymore. They found him in the water. They tried. They put him on a surfboard. They said they tried, but yeah, I think at that point, if you get him immediately, electrical shock stimulation is probably the only thing that has a chance. You know, but you're in the ocean. You can't really do that either. But they have those machines now. Even on YouTube, they have them resuscitate somebody who's had a heart attack. But I feel I'm very sad for that. Very sad. 54-year-old drowns. You know, and he's having fun with his family. He's on vacation, and unexpectedly went a little too far in. I guess some other guy too, same thing happened, except he survived. I'm trying to think of that friend's name now. I want to say Beetlejuice, but it's not. Bug. No. It's on the tip of my tongue. Well, not exactly. It's more further back. Yeah, and I will say, you know, I think I had a little crush on that, you know, actress there that, wasn't it? It was Denise. Not Denise. Denise was the old. I'm talking about Lisa Bonet. I had a crush on Lisa Bonet when I was younger. You know, she just had a certain style that I appreciate. She's artistic. She had the, you know, attractive looking features, and you know, you're a kid, you go, yeah, she's a good looking lady there. And I'll tell you who else doesn't get the credit she deserves by a lot of people, but she should. She should. Thelma, Good Times. Thelma from Good Times. She was very attractive. She still is. If you see a, you know, picture of her from now, or if you go on YouTube, you'll see an interview with her from recent times. She's retained about 92% of her looks. Still looks very nice, very nice. But yeah, she was on that show, Good Times. Another good show. Another good show. Good theme song at the beginning. I used to watch that with a friend of mine. We'd get home from school, 6th grade. He was like my best friend back then. And we'd get, his house was before mine, if you came from a certain direction. And we'd make a pit stop at his house. We'd sit in the, it was like a TV room they had. TV was on the floor. So we'd get in that room. There was like 2 big couches. We'd sit down and watch Good Times. They had 2 episodes. And then my friend would say, "Are you hungry?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm hungry." So we'd go in the kitchen and pull out the pita bread, olive oil, and oregano. And then he'd wrap it up, and he handed it to me the first time. I go, "That's it? Oregano, olive oil, bread?" He goes, "That's it." And then after that, it became kind of like a thing. We'd go over there, make that as a sandwich, and eat pita bread, olive oil, and oregano. And he had good olive oil. The family was Lebanese, and they had really good olive oil. So we'd go and watch Good Times. I loved Good Times. And then after the second episode, I'd go home. But me and him were, you know, constantly hanging out back in those days, 6th grade, 7th grade. quiet night. Thelma. I'll tell you another good show. Sanford and Son. I love Sanford and Son. I used to watch that with my father. I'd come home from work late at night, and well, late at night, not late. 7:30 I'd be home. 7:30, 8 o'clock I'd be home. We'd have dinner then. They'd wait for me, and Sanford and Son would be on at that time. So dinner and Sanford and Son went together. Me and my father, my mother too. She used to watch it with us. And I'd sit there with my father and mother, and we'd watch Sanford and Son. I loved everything about that show. I loved the friends he hung around with. I loved the humor. I loved Aunt Esther, Lamont. And I loved the house. Something about that house, very cozy. Had that chair in front of the TV. That's how it was in my house, the old days. Nice Zenith television set with the rabbit ears. And you'd sit there and watch television. No cable. We just had 3 channels that were good enough to watch. And I loved that show. I loved the theme song, Quincy Jones. Love that theme song. It's very, very clever. I mean, something about it makes you think of a junkyard. And all those friends, Bubba, Grady, you had Julio next door later on, Aunt Esther, her husband there, always had a little drink. But yeah, I love that show. But when he came back and he tried to jumpstart it again with that Cal, that heavy guy, it was not the same anymore. It was not the same. Different Fred, no Lamont. Love the clothing. Fred coming down, always had a nice outfit when he would go to Vegas. They even had an episode where I guess they went to Hawaii, and Fred G. Sanford was mentioning Jack Lord, Steve McGarrett, about the hair and everything. They would have the theme song playing. Because I am a huge fan of Hawaii Five-0, Jack Lord. Another good show. $6 Million Man. But they don't, getting back to sitcoms, Cosby, Sanford and Son, Good Times. They don't make comedy shows like that anymore. Totally different style. I miss those shows. And I miss the theme songs. That was like, the best part of the show. That theme song would come on, get you in the mood. BJ and the Bear, good theme song. Now it's like they go right into the movie, right into the series. And now you have to know what's going on. If you miss a couple episodes, you're lost. It's like a soap opera. It's continuity. Where, when I was a kid, the shows, they existed on their own. Each one, if you just started watching today, you kind of knew what was happening. There was no backstory that you had to know about from, 3-4 episodes ago. No references that you didn't know about. It was all, I was a fan of the $6 Million Man show. I used to run in slow motion. But let's say I never watched an episode, and then on the second season I said, I'm going to watch that. I would immediately know what's going on, because each show stood alone. It was within its own little universe. Now everything has continuity. You have to remember last season that was like 18 months ago. So for the Cosby Show, the only thing you had to know is that Bill Cosby's character was a doctor, right? And then his wife's character, lawyer. And I'll tell you something about Felicia Rashad. I don't know her personally, but just sometimes I watch her, over the years, past 30 years, and I feel like she's a person that gets angry easy. I feel like, I sense a little bit of edginess to her. A little bit. The rest of them, I didn't notice much of that, but she seems to me, if, you say something like maybe you don't pronounce something correctly in front of her, she's going to get on your case. I knew somebody years ago, I'm going to bring them into the conversation, but, so he was like, I don't know, 35 years older than me, back when I was a kid. And he wanted you to pronounce your endings. For example, I said one time to him, I said something like, oh, I just lost the light. Hold on. Well, I lost the light. That's not a good light. You pay for it, but it's not that good. It does not last long. It's a battery, but I think it has like, what, 30 minutes on it? I don't know. And it was fully charged. I charged it overnight, and it went out. So I'm going to do it in the dark. It's not that dark. There's a light above me, but it's not as bright as it once was. So, was I talking about Felicia Rashad? Did I already finish with her? Well, if I didn't, I'm going to start up again. So yeah, I find that she's a little bit edgy, a little bit, like, oh, I know what I was talking about now. So yeah, so I knew somebody who was big on, you have to pronounce your endings. So I said something to him like, I went running today, right? And I said it like I went running today, no G at the end. And, I thought he was interested in what I was saying, the substance. No, he was interested in the fact that I didn't pronounce my G at the end. So I didn't say running G. And he stopped me and he gave me a lecture. Yeah, he gave me a lecture for like 5-10 minutes that he was talking to me about, you got to pronounce your endings when you speak. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to talk anymore. Now I'm like thinking, about what I'm saying too much, and it's throwing me off. Every time I'd run into him after that, I would like think, okay, now I have to concentrate. Every word I say has to have an ending that he can hear so that he doesn't give me a lecture, right? And yeah, that's what he said to me. He goes, you know what, you didn't pronounce your G in running. And I said, well, I didn't notice that. I didn't realize you were listening to me that hard either. But he was. And after that, I didn't like bumping into him too much, because I felt like I had to talk and make sure that every letter was enunciated, right? And I don't really talk like that. So he died, and so I don't have to worry about that anymore. But there was a time when I'd run into him and I really concentrate on him, pronouncing every single letter. And I said to myself back then, you wait until I get a little bit older. I'm going to listen to the way you talk, and if you miss anything, I'm going to bring it up. All right? But I never did that. Anyway, I feel funny talking like this now with the lights off, but I need to get a better, better light. You can't even plug this in. This is one of those lights that just charges, but the battery is anemic. That's not a good battery. I need to get a nice lithium battery that has, like maybe a 4-hour lifespan. Yeah, I'm glad I talked long enough to see that thing give up. Anyway, so that's it. I want to say I will miss Malcolm, Jamal, Warner. I miss them all when they're good. I miss them all. A lot of people, when you think of, throughout your life, how many people have evaporated. There's a lot of people. You miss the good ones, though. And there's not that many of those. You know, not that many. But that's it for now. Ciao.